Hi, it's me, Daphne. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you about all the books I read in September. Some of them I tried to read and failed because I don't know, I've just been in this like aggro DNF mood. So I did end up DNFing 4 books out of the 12 I picked up, which leaves 8 books that I completed for the month of September. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'll start off with the books that I DNF'd. I'm not gonna talk about them for too long, except maybe one of them, which is The Ministry of Time, okay? Definitely the biggest regret I've had in 2024 purchasing Wise. Originally, I saw this book on Book of the Month, was like, kind of intrigued, but like not interested enough to buy it. And then I saw Haley Pham talk about it and she absolutely loved it. She gave it like this raving review and I was like, really cool. This should work for me. It's time travel, a little bit of romance. It's also an Asian author, which is awesome. And I was intrigued. So I decided to pick it up after I saw her video. And I think a lot of people did, but honestly, like, I don't think this book is that strong. I found it extremely boring. The concept is that we have this female worker in the government. She's like in this time traveling program where they had stolen people from the past, and she's supposed to be like this liaison for one of the guys that got pulled from the past, this like captain guy, whatever. I don't even remember his name, and we never know her name, which is kind of annoying. And I was just not having fun with it. It was such a slog. The tone was like kind of funny, but like was just different than what my expectations were. I wanted to know what the mystery was and like some of the weird things that were going on in the government, but I didn't care enough to read it myself. So I did end up searching videos on YouTube to see if anyone gave a spoiler review for it, and I found somebody that did. Let me actually find them now so I can shout them out because they really did me a solid. I found Channel Chapters.
Sorry, that clearly says Chanel Chapters. I don't know why I said channel.
Video about it, and she gave the spoilers that I needed to satiate my curiosity. And to be honest, I was not into where the direction the story went, and she just said it was kind of corny and like she didn't like it, and I was like, yeah, I wouldn't have liked it either. I left a comment. I was like, honestly, thank you for the Ministry of Time spoilers. I'm 40% through and not liking it, but also wanted to know what happened. I'm glad I can DNF without having to wonder. Okay, so I got 40% of the way through. I messaged her that a month ago, obviously. I mean, it's almost the end of October right now. So yeah, that's enough said on that. That was a lot. For my September TBR, I did my TBR jar thing and I pulled West Side Love Story. Just the way things were written and described, I just was not vibing it. And I don't know, I just didn't like it. I just was not in the mood. If I forced myself to read it, I would have rated it poorly, probably. So I DNF'd that, at least for now. And then I was like, let me try paranormal, let me try a werewolf, shifter romance. So I picked up Tattered Loyalties. Again, I like gave that a pretty fair shot. It just like wasn't that fun to read. So I DNF'd that. I would probably delete that off my Kindle just because the writing style, it was just really weak in my personal opinion. I'm sorry. But again, I've been in this mood, so I'm a little harsher lately. And then the last book I tried was The Footman and I, which is a historical. Again, I'm like, I was trying, okay? Those things, all these things are different. I tried a sci-fi, contemporary, retelling, and then I tried a paranormal. Now I'm trying a historical romance. Like, I was trying a lot of different things and they were just not working. So The Footman and I, the premise was really cool, but when I went into the writing style, again, I just was not connecting with it. I might try to revisit it because again, the premise I really liked, but the writing style just was not jiving. I feel like with certain things, my expectations are a lot higher in the writing style, whereas like if I'm just trying to read something smutty and silly, I don't care if the writing style is very good. But if I'm reading things for the plot, I want the writing to be good. That's enough about the books I didn't finish. Let's move on to the books that I did. Okay, so the first one I got to in September that I actually finished was Powerless by Elsie Silvers. I've been continuing my Elsie Silvers journey this year. I've done it pretty well, if I say so myself. I really want to get up to Wild Love, which is the first book in her latest series, though I know she came out with Wild Eyes, which is the second book in her latest series, by the end of this year, but like, it's already the end of October. I don't know if that's gonna happen. There's a lot of things I need to do, and oh gosh. So we'll see, but yeah, I've really blasted through a lot of Elsie Silvers books. This one, so this is the second series, and this is the third book in that series, and it's between Jasper and Sloan. So Jasper is the honorary brother of this group of men on this ranch. If you don't already know, this is the Chestnut Spring series. It kind of takes place on this one ranch in this small Canadian town among the brothers in this family and like the love interests that come into their worlds. But Jasper isn't a blood brother, he is an honorary brother due to circumstances, which you find out in the book. And Sloane is the cousin of the actual brothers. So she's like his cousin, honorarily, but they're not blood related in any way. He is a bit older than her. She's kind of been like in love with him since she was a young girl and he was like a teenager. Obviously they had a different kind of dynamic when they were younger. They treated each other like family, like he did, especially because she's so much younger than him. I think he was probably like 16 or 17 when she was probably 12, if I'm remembering kind of the vibes. She is a dancer, like a ballerina, and he is a hockey player, and they've always looked out for each other. They're like best friends, and she's engaged to this a-hole guy that she doesn't really know. It's kind of like arranged marriage vibes from her father, because her father's like this big businessman and he's trying to make these business moves, and she's just like really compliant with her father's wishes. So she just goes along with this engagement, and Jasper's like, what is this? And it's their romance and her like escaping this engagement and like her running away from the wedding with Jasper, which isn't really a spoiler because I'm pretty sure it says she's like a runaway bride in the synopsis. And they do a little bit of road tripping, and she's just pining after him so hard, and he's starting to see her in a different light. And yeah, I had fun with it. It's not my favorite in the series. I ended up giving it a 3.5, which is pretty solid. Then I read The Sundown Motel for my IRL book club here in New York City with my friends. This is a ghosty thriller mystery story. There are two timelines. One takes place in 1982 with Viv, and then the other one is in 2017 with Carly, who is Viv's niece. So Viv went missing, and Carly comes back to the small New York town, like upstate New York town, where Viv disappeared to like figure out what happened, and a lot of stuff went down at this motel where Viv used to work the night shift. So Carly signs up to work the night shift so she can solve the mystery. I ended up giving this 3 stars. There was a lot of ghost activity, but it wasn't super relevant to the story. Like, it's relevant, but they like, I don't know. I felt like they could have gone further with the ghosty stuff, and it didn't. And then the mystery I felt like was interesting, but I think it could have gone a different way in how the reveals were handled and like how guilty parties were addressed, because I think some actions weren't necessary. I don't want to spoil it. But overall, it was fun to read something out of my normal comfort zone and pick up a spooky little thriller moment. Then I just needed another silly, easy read. I picked up this book called Gold and Shadow. I'm pretty confident I heard about this through my friend Kristen from Kristen Craves Books. This is a fairy tale-esque fantasy story. This one is like the Goldilocks retelling vibe. So we have this young woman who is one of many sisters, and all the sisters have some form of magic. They're like half fae, half human. So they're not immortal like normal fae, but they have longer lives than regular humans, and they have powers unlike regular humans. So she has this shadow magic, and she runs these like shady business deals for this employer because her and her sisters are parentless. They're not like young, all of them. They're like adults. I think most of them are at least, but they really are strapped for cash. And she takes these jobs to help support her family. The mission she's on is to steal this amulet from this guy like out in the woods who is our hero of the story. And he ends up being a bear shifter, and it's their romance. They get snowed in. He doesn't trust her, but there's just something about her that he just can't deny. So it's just like a cute little story, and then it definitely leaves it open for the other sisters to have their own spin-off stories and like an overarching plot and like all this stuff. It was like not the strongest thing I ever read. I ended up giving it 3 stars, but it satisfied what I was looking for. My expectations weren't like through the roof for it. It was just like a silly fun time. Not really that smutty, to be honest, but it was cute. And the world building was, you know, intriguing enough. I think I skimmed the action bit at the end with like the bad guy, just because in romances I know things are gonna work out. And I just don't care that much. I'm mostly here just for the relationship stuff, not as much the plot, mystery, actioning bits. Like, obviously, if I'm gonna continue the series, I need to know what happened, but I was just reading it for the romance. Then I moved on to a Reckless and Elsie Silver's series, the Chestnut Spring series, and that is Winter and Theo's story. So the one complaint, the biggest complaint I have about Elsie Silver's choices when it comes to her series is that she doesn't rehash enough what happened in the other books. So Winter is the sister of the main character in the first book, like the main female character, and she has a bad reputation in that book. Like, she's not a nice sister, she's like very cold, unironically, with her name being Winter. And yeah, there was all this like history with like abuse and from somebody, like I think it's kind of complicated. And it's a bit of a spoiler for the first book, so I won't say, but there was issues going on between the sisters and like other people involved that were like abusing the main character in the first book, that Winter didn't really know about. But like, it wasn't rehashed when we get from book 1 to book 4 now that we're with Winter. So I was like fucking confused. I was like, I don't remember what happened. I don't know why Winter has a bad reputation. So I found that really frustrating, and I wish you would kind of build the foundation again, and like sometimes you have to repeat, okay? It's just, you can't, I don't know. Like, I'm binging the book series pretty close together, and I still can't remember, though honestly, I didn't reread the first one. I reread the second one because the second one is really good, but I didn't reread the first one. But still, like, to expect everybody to remember what happened and the nuances between the relationships across the other books, like, that's kind of asking a lot. I could use like at least one paragraph refresher, okay? So anyway, Winter is trying to rebuild her relationship with her sister. So she moves out of the city to the small town her sister moved to. She's like a doctor. I'm actually remembering. It was pretty hilarious how often it's repeated that Winter is a doctor. So like, anytime there was a sentence like, yeah, Winter's a doctor, it's like, oh, is she a doctor? Like, I would say that to myself. I'm like, oh, is she a doctor? Because it was just like said over and over and over again in a that's really hard to say, in obnoxious, there we go, an obnoxious amount of times. And like, we don't even see her really in the hospital that much for it to be said that often, okay? So rant over. The main premise of this story is that Theo is very attracted to Winter. He's a few years younger than her. They agree to have like a one-night stand because Winter honestly needs to get laid. She's very uptight, and she falls pregnant. So it's like we have their hookup and then we time jump pretty far to when the baby is a little older. And then Theo comes back to town. You quickly learn that there's been a bit of a misunderstanding. I won't spoil it. And it's their relationship and Theo trying to be there as a father and still really liking Winter and all this stuff. Being vague makes it sound more complicated than it is, but I don't want to spoil it. I ended up giving this book a 3.5 stars. I had a pretty good time. I will say it was a little melodramatic in some aspects, like the internal dialogues of the characters. I was like, okay, I get it. It was like a bit heavy and a lot. So sometimes it wasn't like as fun as I wanted it to be, because it was just like, oh, this agonizing like internal monologue. And like, Winter has a lot of self-hate towards herself. Like, she's just brutal, you know, she just does not really like herself that much. And Theo is there to be like, no, you're amazing, you're a good person, which I can kind of relate to. Sometimes I just be like, am I a bad person? Anyway, too deep, though. I'll leave that for my therapist. Overall, still enjoying the series, and I haven't at this current moment in time read the last book. Fairy Loot just came out with these gorgeous editions, and I'm actually interested in getting them, and I never buy special editions. So these are the Fairy Loot editions. They're just absolutely stunning. I think these are the reverse dust jackets, or maybe the under the dust jackets. Oh, if they're under the dust jackets, it's probably under the dust jacket. They're so pretty. And then here are the individual ones. We've got Flawless, so cute. Then we've got the Under the Dust Jacket, Heartless, Powerless. I love that she's wearing his jersey, so cute. Then we have Reckless, so this is Winter's book. Winter looks so much sweeter in this. She just gives like really bitch energy. I wouldn't imagine her this way, even though I know she's blonde. And then Hopeless is the last one, which I haven't read and I don't even know who it's between. Having a blast with that series. Next, I read Man-Eater, which is a fantasy, kind of contemporary fantasy vibe romance between a succubus woman and a human man. I think he's just human. No, he's a witch. He's a witch. We have plus size rep with our female main character, and we have bi rep with our male main character. And this is just like, honestly, just the sweetest little cozy little book, low angst. It's supposed to take place in like the 80s, like especially based off how our main character is dressed on the cover, but it doesn't feel like that at all. Like there's no indicator that it's the 80s besides the fact that she doesn't have a cell phone and he just leaves the voicemails at her apartment. That's the only indicator. This is a 0.5 book. The main characters in this book are the parents of the main characters in the following books. And it's just like a background, I guess, but as its own book, it was cute and fun, and I just love how sweet and adorable our male main character was. I think his name was Sean. He's not very experienced as a lover, and obviously to be paired up with a succubus, like he saves her from a bad situation and she finds him cute and charming and not like her usual type. And they just like go on little dates and he's just so cute and he's like super respectful, and I don't know. It was just really sweet. It was just cute. Okay, if you just need something cute and a bit spicy, but like mostly cute and paranormal and fantasy, like this is a decent option, okay? I ended up giving this a 3.5 and I would definitely recommend it. The next one I'm gonna talk about very briefly. This is The River Serpent. This is a book written by a booktuber associate who's gone author. This is her debut book. It is a fantasy romance with a bit of mystery and dark elements. It's not that long. It's like novella length. I personally felt it. I don't want to bash, okay? And everybody can like what they like. Without going into too much detail, I personally did not enjoy this book very much. I thought it could have used more time in development to be fleshed out a little bit further. I think it was very confusing. I thought the actions taken by the characters didn't make that much sense. I think the motivations could have used more work. Yeah, I put a review on Goodreads, my honest opinion, if you want like more details on that, because like reviews are for reviewers and like readers, not for authors. Obviously, much love to anybody that's trying to write a book. I'm not trying to write a book because that shit is hard, okay? And it's very vulnerable. So props to anyone that like puts themselves out there in that way. But as like an art piece, it is open for critique. And I ended up giving it 2 stars because I felt like it needed a lot more fleshing out. And I don't know, I just had a hard time. And the ending, there's a lot of action at the end, which is cool and exciting, but it just didn't make sense to me. Like, I just was so confused. And I'm not stupid, okay? I'm like decently smart. And I just found it very confusing. I mean, if you want to read it, go for it. I'm pretty sure it's still on KU. That's how I read it. So that's enough said, okay? The second to last book I finished in September was Wait For It by Mariana Zapata. I read this in one of my recent vlogs. I had a really fun time with this. This is a slow burn romance, of course, because it's our queen Mariana Zapata, who is the queen of slow burn. It is about a young woman who has custody of her 2 young nephews. One's like 11 and the other one's, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8. They move to a new town and it's her romance with the man across the street who ends up being the baseball coach for her older nephew. And it's just really sweet. The perspective is only from the woman, so seeing those little breadcrumbs and clues of how the hero is falling in love with her, I just eat it up. I just eat it up. The first time I read Mariana Zapata, I did struggle because I didn't my expectations were all wonky. Like, I just didn't know how her writing worked. But now that I know how it works, and I know you have to like look for those little embers of like, oh my God, like he wants to hold her hand, or why is he here? Like he wants to spend time with her. Like the little clues about how he's falling in love with her. They're a lot more fun when you understand how it works. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It was a really good book to read while I was feeling slumpy because I was just desperate to get to the end to see them be together and in love and like confess and kiss each other for the first time. And yeah, I had a really fun time. And then the last book I read was completely unhinged. It was called Little Stranger. This is a taboo romance. We have our 2 main characters being raised in the same adopted family. So they're foster siblings. They don't share any blood, and they don't share any blood with the parents that adopted them, obviously, either. So they meet when they're very young. So she was probably like 6 and he was probably like 7 or 8 when they first met. So they're living in like this mansion, and as soon as this little boy meets her, he's like, you're mine, but not in like a sexual way because he's a child, but in just a like obsessive way. And he's mute, he doesn't speak. So like we time jump to when she's like 18 and he's 19, but they're still living at home with their parents. So like it gets sexual, it's a smutty book, but they're of legal age from pretty much the very beginning, you know. Like, I mean, they give background of like when they were kids, but it's not that long, and then we jump into them being of legal age. And it's just a silly, unhinged, steamy time, and he's just crazy. And she's just like trying to deny her attraction to him, but like they cuddle in bed together, and she's like, oh, I don't know if this is what like normal siblings do. And it's like, honey, no, it's not what normal siblings do. You're in love with him and he's crazy. And then something completely unhinged happens, and then we time jump again, maybe like 5+ years, maybe like 8 years. In the second half of the books, or like part 2, they hadn't seen each other for a long time because of what happened. I don't want to spoil it. And now it like notches up like 10 more times unhinged. Like really unhinged, and it goes into the masked fetish. So the main guy, he's wearing a mask now, so she's not sure who he is, and it's like all this like steamy, smutty stuff, and like I was very entertained. It was a wild ride. There were some things where you're like, okay, I have to suspend my disbelief, because like she definitely should have recognized who he was even if he was wearing a mask, because of certain very, very distinguishable qualities. If you've read this book, or if you're gonna read this book, you will know what distinguishable qualities I'm talking about. Okay, there's something very distinguishable about his, and I'm like, how do you not know who he is, honey? I don't know, should I just tell you? He's got like the ladder piercing, and then like the loop at the end. It's a lot of piercings. Like, how would you not recognize that, okay? And he even says, he's like, I hope she doesn't recognize. So yeah, it was a really silly, fun time. I gave that 4 stars. If you just really are in the mood for something dark and like taboo and out there, and like there's like blood play and kidnapping and like bondage, just like a lot of things going on. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you're into that kind of stuff and you're in the mood for that. I had fun. All right, so those are all the books that I read in September. Thank you for spending some time with me and letting me chat books to you. Let me know how your September went down in the comments. And that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave it a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate it, and obviously it helps out my channel. And I will catch you in another video. Bye.